You know what separates people who dream from people who achieve? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not being born into the right family. It's the invisible force that shows up long before the spotlight ever does. It's the discipline to do the work when no one is watching. Winners aren't built on motivation. They're built on mindset. And if you master your discipline, you stop wishing for change and start creating it. Tonight, I'm going to show you exactly how winners think, act, and rise, no matter where they start. When we talk about self-discipline, most people think it starts with forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do. But that's not where winners begin. Winners don't start with motivation or pressure or even accountability. They start with identity. They ask themselves a deeper question: who am I becoming? Because when you shift the way you see yourself, your actions follow with much less resistance. Most people try to change their behavior without changing their identity, and that's why they burn out. They push themselves for a week, maybe a month, and then fall right back into old patterns. Not because they're weak, but because their actions were fighting against the story they kept telling themselves. Winners rewrite that story. You can wake up every morning and tell yourself you should be more disciplined, or you can wake up and decide, I'm the kind of person who honors my commitments. That small shift changes everything. When you identify as someone who follows through, discipline becomes a natural expression of who you are, not a battle you fight every day. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't negotiate with yourself about brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation or inspiration. You do it because it's who you are. That's the quiet confidence winners walk with. Discipline becomes automatic when your identity is aligned with the future you're building. And the truth is, your identity is being shaped every single day, whether you're aware of it or not. Every time you follow through on something small, like putting your phone down when you said you would, or finishing a task you wanted to avoid, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. Every choice is a vote. Every action is evidence. People think discipline is built in the big moments, but winners know it's built in the small ones. It's built in the moments when no one sees you, no one praises you, no one validates you. It's built when you hold yourself to a standard simply because that standard matters to you. Most people rely on motivation, and they wonder why they're inconsistent. Motivation is like weather. It changes. It rises and falls. It disappears without warning. You can't build a life on something that's unpredictable. Winners know that when motivation leaves, identity remains. When you don't feel like working, your identity kicks in. When you're tired, stressed, overwhelmed, your identity steps forward and says, this is who we are. This is what we do. That's the muscle winners build. Not the muscle of motivation, but the muscle of identity-driven discipline. And it doesn't mean you never struggle. It means you stop negotiating. Most people lose the battle not because of the size of the challenge, but because of the negotiations they have with themselves. They say, I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll skip just this once. Winners don't give themselves that back door. They make a decision once, and then they live according to that decision. They don't decide every day whether they're going to be disciplined. They decided that months ago, years ago. And that's where the real strength comes from. The decision is made, the identity is set, the action is simply the follow-through. There's a moment in a winner's life when they realize something powerful. If you want to change your life, you must change the standard you hold yourself to. You can't expect a champion's life with a casual identity. You can't expect extraordinary with an I'll try mentality. Identity requires commitment, and commitment requires honesty. Honesty about your habits, your excuses, your patterns, your stories. When you look in the mirror and say, this is the person I am becoming, you start to live like that person. You start to choose like that person. You start to show up like that person. And the beautiful thing is, once your identity aligns, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like self-respect. It becomes the way you honor your future. It becomes the way you protect your potential. You no longer see discipline as restriction. You see it as freedom. Freedom from chaos, freedom from inconsistency, freedom from regret. Winners discipline themselves not because they have to, but because they want to live a life they're proud of. At the end of the day, identity is the root. Actions are the branches. If you want a stronger life, strengthen the root. If you want better habits, start with the story you're believing about yourself. When you shift that story, the behaviors follow. When you strengthen that identity, the discipline becomes natural. And when the discipline becomes natural, the results become inevitable. That's the moment you stop trying to be a winner and start becoming one. If there's one thing that separates people who crumble under pressure from people who rise above it, it's the way they speak to themselves when no one else can hear. Winners know that discipline doesn't begin with action. It begins with the internal dialogue that shapes those actions. The conversations you have in your own mind are the steering wheel of your life. If your self-talk is filled with doubt, excuses, and hesitation, you're going to drive yourself straight into patterns that reflect that. But when your internal voice becomes your ally instead of your enemy, discipline becomes a natural extension of your thinking. Most people don't realize how powerful their inner dialogue is. They let thoughts float through their mind without questioning them, without filtering them, without taking control. And when the voice in your head says things like, "I'm tired," "I'm not good enough," or "this is too much," it doesn't just reflect your reality, it creates it. The mind obeys what it consistently hears. Winners understand this, which is why they are intentional about the language they use internally. They don't indulge in thoughts that weaken them. They redirect, they reframe, they take ownership of the narrative happening in their mind. Self-discipline becomes almost impossible when your inner dialogue is filled with negotiations. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, or that one day won't matter, or that it's okay to quit because no one will know. But winners know that these tiny negotiations are the cracks that break the foundation. So instead of negotiating, they ask better questions. What would the best version of me do right now? What decision aligns with the life I want? Is this choice strengthening me or weakening me? Those questions shift the focus from temporary feelings to long-term identity. They turn your thoughts from excuses into empowerment. And that's the thing, winners aren't stronger because they never feel doubt or hesitation. They're stronger because they refuse to let that doubt be the loudest voice in the room. They've trained themselves to speak with clarity even when their emotions are loud. They've practiced the discipline of talking to themselves in a way that builds momentum instead of killing it. And this isn't about fake positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about speaking truth that empowers instead of weakness that excuses. Think about how often you talk yourself out of something before you even start. Most people don't fail because the task is too hard. They fail because their inner narrative convinces them they can't handle it. Winners interrupt that pattern. They catch those limiting thoughts the moment they appear, and they replace them with thoughts that align with their goals. Thoughts like, "I've handled hard things before. This is uncomfortable, but I can grow from it," or "I don't need to feel ready to begin." That's how discipline grows, from the inside out. And the way you talk to yourself isn't just about motivation. It's about trust. Every time you break a promise to yourself, that inner voice gets a little louder with doubt. But every time you follow through, even on something small, you build trust with yourself. You prove to your mind that your word means something. And once you trust yourself, discipline no longer feels like a chore. It becomes a way of honoring that trust. That's why winners guard their self-talk so fiercely. They know it's the foundation of their confidence. This inner dialogue also affects the way you handle failure. People who lack discipline often spiral when they mess up. They let one mistake become a reason to quit. Their inner voice jumps straight to shame or self-criticism. But winners treat mistakes differently. Their self-talk says, "Okay, that wasn't ideal, but we're learning," or "this is part of the process," or "let's get back on track right now." They don't let failure define them. They use their inner dialogue to redirect their energy and keep moving. Your mind can be the greatest tool or the greatest obstacle in your life. And the beautiful thing is, you get to choose which one it becomes. You can train your inner voice just like any muscle. You can make it stronger, clearer, more supportive, more aligned with who you want to be. The more intentional you are with your self-talk, the more disciplined your actions become. And the more disciplined your actions become, the more you trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. At the core of it all, winners know that the voice inside them must be louder than the noise around them. They speak to themselves with purpose, with honesty, and with strength. They create mental conversations that push them toward the life they're building, not the life they're avoiding. And when your inner voice becomes a coach instead of a critic, discipline stops feeling like a fight. It becomes the natural rhythm of who you are. That's the power of mastering your inner dialogue. It becomes the place where your discipline is born and where your future begins. One of the defining traits of people who consistently win in life is their ability to choose long-term rewards over short-term comfort. And that choice isn't always glamorous. It isn't exciting. Most of the time, it's quiet, it's unseen, and it's happening when no one is applauding. Discipline is really the art of saying yes to your future self, even when your present self is begging for the easier path. Winners understand this deeply. They know that every comfortable decision has a cost, and every disciplined decision has a payoff, even if that payoff doesn't show up right away. We live in a world that sells instant everything, instant gratification, instant results, instant shortcuts, and because of that, most people get frustrated when change doesn't happen overnight. They dip their toes in discipline, but the moment it gets uncomfortable, they retreat, not because they don't want to grow, but because they've trained themselves to prioritize feeling good right now over being proud later. Winners flip that script. They accept that discomfort is part of the journey. They accept that anything meaningful requires time, patience, effort, and sacrifice. They don't see discomfort as a signal to stop. They see it as proof they're on the right path. When you delay gratification, you strengthen a kind of internal muscle that most people never learn to build. It's the muscle that says, I can handle waiting. I can handle work. I can handle not getting what I want immediately. That muscle is what turns ordinary intentions into extraordinary outcomes. Because if you can train yourself to push past the urge for instant comfort, you open the door to long-term success that most people never access. Think about how many dreams die because someone couldn't tolerate temporary discomfort. How many goals are abandoned because the results weren't fast enough. How many people quit too soon because the process felt inconvenient? Winners don't quit when it gets inconvenient. They expect inconvenience. They expect resistance. They expect fatigue. And instead of making decisions based on how they feel in the moment, they make decisions based on the future they're committed to creating. And here's the truth: long-term gains often don't feel good in the beginning. Waking up early doesn't feel good. Saying no to distractions doesn't feel good. Consistently working on something without applause doesn't feel good. But winners don't chase the feeling, they chase the outcome. They remind themselves that the short-term discomfort is temporary and the reward is lasting. They understand that the pain of discipline will always be lighter than the pain of regret. What's powerful is that once you start choosing long-term rewards over short-term relief, something inside you shifts. You begin to trust yourself more. You build a different kind of confidence, the confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on your own commitment. And once that trust grows, the need for instant gratification gets quieter, your ability to wait gets stronger. You become someone who can delay pleasure because you know there's something better waiting on the other side. This mindset also teaches patience. And patience isn't passive, it's powerful. It means you're strong enough to stay steady even when the results are slow. It means you don't let frustration make decisions for you. It means you keep showing up, not because success is guaranteed today, but because you know success is inevitable if you keep going. Winners don't fall in love with immediate results. They fall in love with the process that leads to those results. And yes, choosing long-term goals over short-term comfort sometimes feels lonely. It feels like you're moving slower than others. It feels like you're sacrificing things people around you aren't sacrificing. But what you're really doing is separating yourself. You're building a life that most people will only wish for because most people aren't willing to make those short-term sacrifices. Winners understand that every no today is making room for a much bigger yes tomorrow. The truth is, nothing extraordinary happens by accident. It happens through consistent, disciplined choices that don't always feel good in the moment, but feel incredible in the end. And when you look back months or years from now, you won't remember the temporary discomfort. You'll remember the pride. You'll remember the growth. You'll remember that you showed up for the future version of yourself who was counting on you. That's the real mindset of a winner. The willingness to choose what's meaningful over what's easy again and again until the results speak louder than the sacrifices ever did. When you step back and look at everything we've talked about, your identity, your inner dialogue, your ability to choose long-term growth over short-term comfort, it becomes clear that self-discipline isn't just a skill. It's a mindset. It's a commitment. It's a way of living that transforms you from the inside out. Winners aren't born with something special. They build themselves through the daily decisions most people overlook. They hold themselves to a higher standard, not because someone is watching, but because they know their future is shaped by the choices they make when no one is. And if there's one thing I want you to walk away with, it's this. You have everything inside you to become that kind of person. You can rewrite your identity. You can master the voice in your mind. You can choose discipline over ease, purpose over comfort, and growth over excuses. You can become the person your future self will thank you for. All it takes is a decision to stop waiting for the perfect moment and start creating the life you were meant to live. The door to your potential is already open. Now it's your turn to walk through it.